Let's watch a video about weed. Yes, you are smoking it earlier. I know that exact weed. Okay. Yep, that one. But yeah, let's talk about weed. Another video from kurzgesagt in the nutshell. Okay, I still don't know how to pronounce their name, but I love this channel. Their videos are really sick, their animations are really sick, and their videos are really sick for real. But yeah, this got a lot of views. Let's watch this together. Something about weed we have to talk about.
Cannabis has been vilified to a ridiculous degree for the last century, but it's now finally being decriminalized in more and more places around the world. It's just recently been legalized in Germany, and for very good reasons. Compared to legal drugs like alcohol, which will cause 1 in 20 deaths just this year, cannabis is pretty mild. So, to justify harsh prosecution and punishment, its negative effects have been wildly overstated. Naturally, there was a lot of pushback, and here's something went wrong. If you followed the discourse over the last few years, you might have got the impression that weed has almost only upsides and few, if any, negative side effects.
Really? So it has more benefits. I know they use it as kind of a medicine as well, and they have dispensaries and stuff like that, right? But still, okay, so it have more benefits than negatives, you can say, or more advantage than disadvantage. Okay, cool. Did not know that.
We ourselves contributed to that narrative. What made this worse is that criminalization made it very hard for scientists to study cannabis, especially its long-term effects. They faced bureaucratic and legal hurdles, and studies often had to rely on small sample sizes. In the last few years, this finally started to change, so it's time to bring new evidence to the discussion.
Okay.
And, well, it's not pretty. While weed is still much less harmful than alcohol, it does have a dark side.
I'm sure
it is more addictive than we thought and can have significant negative effects if you use it long term. It seems that... what are you doing? Before you tell us how dumb we are, please watch the video. To be crystal clear, we think prohibition doesn't work and cannabis should be legal. But this also means that we need to treat it as what it is. Doesn't work and cannabis should be legal. But this also means that we need to treat it as what it is, a drug, with unique upsides and downsides. So let's take an honest look at some of the latest research together. Weed is getting stronger and stronger. Cannabis's magic juice is tetrahydrocannabinol, THC.
By the way, I have never done weed or smoked weed, so I really don't know. I cannot really relate to it, how it forms or how addicted it is or addicting it is, you know. But yeah, let's see.
It docks on your cannabinoid receptors, which affects various brain functions. THC activates some regions and calms down others, creating a fun cocktail of sensations. The more THC, the more intense the high. And people seem to be into higher highs, or at least this is what the market is providing. In the US, Canada, and in Europe, the concentration of THC in legal and illegal cannabis products has more than doubled in the last few decades.
Oh, so it's getting like more, like it gets you more high now. So it's getting more, the percentage is going high, which means it's gonna make you high as well if you smoke it. Okay.
While ever more potent strains are bred, products like edibles or concentrates with more than 60% THC have become increasingly common. While the share of products with less than 15% THC has declined. Unfortunately, just about every problem weed creates gets worse at higher THC doses. At the same time, more and more people use weed. In the US, more people consumed cannabis daily than alcohol for the first time in 2022. In Canada, 26% of people 16 and older use it, up from 22% in 2018. It's not possible to say if legalization is the reason for this though, since studies are pretty inconsistent and vary massively between different users. In some, consumption went up. In others, it stayed stable, and the trend to use more weed began in the early 90s and sped up in the 2000s, way earlier than legalization. So today, more people consume more weed than ever before in the last century, and it's the strongest it's ever been.
Okay.
What are we seeing as a result of this? Let's start with something that used to get you laughed out of the room: addiction. Weed addiction and withdrawal symptoms. A big narrative about weed is that it's not addictive, or at least not that big of a deal. And for
Okay.
most people, this is true. Studies clearly show that the majority handle it well. For 8 out of 10 using weed, it's just a casual high and not problematic at all.
Okay.
About 2 in 10 users develop a
Casual high. Not really high, but they are just kind of high, you can say. Okay.
cannabis use disorder, or CUD. CUD has 11 different symptoms, from the inability to stop when you've had enough, to using it when you know it will have negative consequences, to tolerance and withdrawal. They can all basically be reduced to you're doing it too often, even if it's bad for you, and it's less fun than it could be. There are 3 major risk factors here: the amount of THC, how often you consume, and your age when you start using cannabis.
Oh.
The more THC, the more often, and the younger you are when you start, the higher your risk. If you smoke too much weed too often, it will have negative impacts on your life.
Okay.
So if this is you, toning it down a bit will make a big
Not me.
difference.
Are
1
you?
in 10 users develops a serious addiction. They usually consume daily, and their life is significantly impaired or held back because
Oh,
they
man.
spend a lot of their time either using or recovering from cannabis use. Since their brain is building a tolerance, they need increasingly high doses or stronger weed, often both.
Oh.
Studies found a variety of negative effects. Heavy users can experience bad moods, feel irritable, restless, paranoid, anxious, and even depressive.
Wow.
In a sad twist of irony, for many addicts it feels like they need weed to fight these symptoms. Maybe it did
Oh.
actually help at first, while in reality it makes those symptoms stronger
Worse.
and more persistent. Studies also found that loneliness and frequent cannabis use go hand in hand. If you feel lonely, you're more likely to use weed, and if you use weed, you may experience more
More
loneliness.
loneliness. Oh,
It's not all
that is crazy, dude. That is crazy. Okay. But not gonna lie, really interesting. Really interesting. Like how the more you smoke, the more you want it. But it doesn't have as negative effects as alcohol, as they said. And the more lonely you are, the more you smoke. And the more you smoke, the more you lonely be, or you wanna be. And yeah, it can get to depression and tiredness and all that stuff like that. But yeah, I think so it's not a good thing, but they do use it as a good thing too sometimes, I guess, which can get you kind of addicted. So yeah, I don't know.
always easy to say which came first, but they seem to reinforce each other. So on the one hand, cannabis makes loneliness feel much less bad. On the other hand, it can also make you feel more socially awkward than you actually are and withdraw from friends. This can lead to a downward spiral that ends in self-isolation and chronic loneliness.
Oh.
Another thing many people who consume a lot experience is a mental numbness that makes boredom feel okay because it impacts the reward system of your brain. Not great, but good enough.
Oh.
You can spend your days killing time binging mildly interesting stuff, being numb rather than having fun. Boredom is a signal to your mind to get creative or learn something new, but this is suppressed. This also makes quitting so much harder because your daily routines suddenly seem boring and unexciting, making it very tempting to go back. If you find yourself using constantly, this can also stunt your development as a person. The numbness dulls bad feelings, making it easy not to deal with them. But in life, you can only get over bad feelings if you actually feel them, and you have to process them to grow. Lastly, let's talk about physical withdrawal symptoms. The more you consume, the worse they'll be for you, especially if you use daily. Withdrawal can cause headaches, sweating or chills, decreased appetite, in severe cases even fever, nausea and abdominal pain.
Oh.
You might have trouble falling asleep, and if you do, you might have disturbing and vivid dreams.
Oh.
The withdrawal can put you in a depressive mood where life feels daft and
Yeah,
pointless.
yeah.
You can feel restless, angry, anxious or nervous. You may feel unable to do anything at all.
Bro,
After a
this
few
thing is
days,
crazy,
these
man.
symptoms will begin to subside, and after a few weeks, they'll be gone entirely.
Oh,
The
cool.
exact time depends on how much and how long you've been consuming cannabis.
Uh-huh.
Now, let's get to the worst part.
Okay, what is that?
Weed may damage your brain. This section was not fun to research because there's fierce debate among researchers how bad weed is for your brain and whether it has irreversible long-term consequences or not. There's no consensus yet, and it's hard to say anything definitive. Having said that, THC directly interferes with critical brain chemistry. There is some evidence that it may alter its structure.
Okay.
If it does, this may go away again if you quit after a few years, or not. We don't know yet.
Okay.
The consequences vary a lot between individuals, but especially for heavy users, they have a variety of potentially unfunny downsides. The most common one is that your memory gets significantly worse.
Oh.
Sustained heavy use may reduce your ability to learn, your reasoning, perception, attention span, decision-making, language abilities, and impulse control. Most negative effects seem to go away or at least weaken over time after you quit, but again, we simply don't know enough and need more research.
Oh, not much research.
Where the
is done
evidence
on
is
it, man.
much clearer is that consuming a lot of weed is really bad for teenagers on multiple levels.
Yeah.
If you start using heavily early, you have many more years to build up potentially negative side effects. Teens who use a lot are much more likely to become addicted to weed. This may just be correlation and weed may not be the underlying cause, but heavy weed users are more likely to perform poorly in school and less likely to finish their education.
Damn.
They are on average less satisfied with their life and what they've achieved.
Really?
This may simply be because if your memory and motivation are stunted, you have fewer interesting experiences and forget the ones you do have. And there is strong evidence that teen users are way more likely to develop mental health issues like psychosis, schizophrenia, depression, or anxiety later in life.
Damn.
Once again, the younger you start, the higher the risk. And it also seems to rise massively with high THC doses, making highly potent cannabis products even more dangerous for teens. Okay, let's wrap this up. We've only focused on the negative sides in this video.
Okay.
That was the whole point. As we said before, for most people, weed in moderation is totally fine and definitely way less harmful than alcohol.
Yeah.
You do you. We're not your parents.
Yeah,
The
that's
upside of moderation is also that when you do it, your experience will be more intense and special. But for teens, weed, especially using it regularly or a lot of it, is a bad idea, with potentially life-changing consequences. We know that criminalization did nothing to make this better. We now have a new chance under legalization. It begins with being open and honest about the state of science and acknowledging that weed is one drug among many others. Certainly not the worst one by a long shot, but also problematic for at least 1 to 3 out of 10 people using it. If you really have to try cannabis, there is a time and place, and that's in your 20s. If you're younger, the science is clear, don't do it. At least, not yet. You'll have
If you are
plenty of
teen,
time to
don't do it.
experiment later.
Okay. Good talk about weed, which I'm sure maybe some of you all needed it because this video was really kind of going trending. It was kind of going viral, and most of their videos do go trending because they're really good and they really choose really kind of unique topics to talk about, to make video on. But this one was really nice, man. This one was really nice, really well done as always. And first of all, as I told in the video too, I have never done weed, never smoked weed, any kind of thing with the weed or any kind of drugs you can say. And yeah, I think so, which is better than doing it as far as with the weed you can say, because it does not have that much harmful things in it, or it's not that bad as other drugs, but still, as they showed in the video, it's better to not. First of all, it's always good to not do it at all, because once you start or once you think of, okay, let me just check it, let me just try it, so once you just go for a try, then you say again, so you the addiction starts from there, you can say. But after that, it's not a good thing. If you're a teen, it's not a good thing at all. Even they mentioned in the video so many times that do not do it if you are young teen, but after 20s or after that, you can try, and it won't have as many negative effects on you as it would have in your young age or in your teens age, when you are a teenager. But yeah, but I'm sure many people do it, many people have done it, many people have smoked it, and I also know that it can make you really high and make you feel good as many drugs do, and which makes you keep going that cycle again and again. And but yeah, the good thing is not as bad as alcohol and other drugs. So if you do it, if you do smoke it, it won't have that many negative effects, even if you do it later in the life. As even in the video they said, you can try it later, but don't try not to start it when you are very young, because it can have all kinds of brain issues, the other issues, the loneliness and depression all comes, and many other problems come, the anger, the frustration, the memory gets really weak, you cannot perform good in school, and all that things come together, and it can make your life miserable and bad. So yeah, what a great video, another great video by kurzgesagt in a nutshell. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.